joining. I want to thank you all for joining our Courage California's Power Hour this evening. My name is Irene Gao. I'm the Executive Director of Courage California. Before we get started, a quick note, again, that we're recording this session. Before we get into the program, I do want us to take a quick moment of silence to honor the victims, the families, and the communities of the recent shootings in Uvalde, Buffalo, and Laguna Woods. Thank you. And now for an Indigenous land acknowledgement. Courage California acknowledges our presence on the traditional and unceded territory of hundreds of First Nations who are the traditional caretakers of this land we call California. As visitors on this land, we pay our respects to the ancestors, elders, relatives, and future generations. All right, good evening, everyone. I also want to thank, while we get started, Kayla Rubano and Neil Cordova from Pro Bono ASL for providing ASL interpretation for tonight. All right, so timing wise, we are now less than 2 weeks away from when ballots are due for our California primary election. And while national media, and I think a lot of folks' attention is really focused on the November general election, many important races and local ballot measures are actually going to be decided on this June 7th ballot, which is why we want to really make sure folks, know that this election is happening and get their ballots in for this election. So with more details about sort of what's going on with this election and to give an overview of tonight's event, I want to introduce Courage California's political director, Mai Tao. Mai?
Hi, everyone. Again, thank you for joining our California Voter Week of Action Power event. So we are exactly 12 days away from June 7th, and there's a lot at stake. So during this primary election, voters will be making decisions with deep impact at the federal, state, and local level, and many local races and ballot measures will be decided by majority voters in the primary election. So there are contested county district attorney and sheriff races this year, and a candidate can win outright with the majority of the vote without going to a runoff election. And this is why we shouldn't wait until until the November election to vote. And in some congressional and most state races, the top two primary election vote getters will advance to the general election. So whatever issues matters to you the most, the races and the ballot measures on your June 7th ballot will directly impact your city, county, and our state. And always remember that your primary election vote is what matters the most as well. So with that, I'd like to kick us off with our power hour off with a quick Zoom poll. We are interested to know what issue is most top of mind for you as you decide who or what to vote for on your June 7th ballot. So I think what's going to happen is we do not have a Zoom poll that will pop up. If you can go ahead and chat into the chat box, what issue is most top of mind for you? We listed a few: economic security, housing and homelessness, public safety, climate change, or other. So we'd love for you to go ahead and put into the chat, and I will go ahead and put this question into the chat box now as well so you can see. We'll give you a few minutes to answer. Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, the Zoom poll did go up. Okay, perfect. My apologies. We were having some difficulties on the back end. Okay, and as you all are answering the poll, I wanted to just give you a quick rundown of tonight's Power Hour event. So we will hear from Data for Social Good on the results of our Central Valley congressional polling, and from Communities for New California and Black Women for Wellness Action Project on specific state and local races. Our Courage team will also introduce some useful voter resources for this election. So really excited. And Lisa Marie, if we have a good amount of participants that have already answered, if we can close the poll and see if we can share the polling results. And thank you for some of the folks who were able to add into the chat some of the other answers that are different from some of the options that we gave you. Perfect. All right, so it seemed like housing is a really important issue or concern for most of you. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. And thanks for participating. So with that little activity, I'd like to go ahead and transition to one of our first speakers. So Courage has been conducting polls and focus groups since fall of 2020 to better understand how voters, especially young voters, get information on politics, how they plan to vote, and what issues they care about the most. And so in partnership with Communities for New California and Data for Social Good, we conducted polls in the newly drawn Central Valley Congressional Districts 21 and 22. So to speak more about our polling results, I'd like to introduce Professor Lisa Garcia Bedoya, one of the nation's foremost political engagement experts, Data for Social Good co-founder, and one of our very own Courage board members. All right, Lisa, take it away.
Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you for being here. I hope everyone can see my screen. Yes? I see. Yes? Okay. So we're just going to run quickly through pulling out one part of our polling, which is really why Latinas are so important if we are thinking about Latinx political engagement generally. So just to lay the groundwork, looking at voting propensities in both of these districts, we can see, and this is true actually for all groups in US society, but the gap is even bigger among the Latinx community, that women tend to register and vote at much higher rates than their co-ethnic men. And so we can see that in CA21, at every level of vote propensity, you see women just having a higher percentage in terms of turning out to vote. Same thing in 22. Basically roughly 56, 57% of Latinx voters are Latinas. And so it's important to keep that in mind as we look at then how we think Latino women vote. And so the first is that, at least according to the poll that we just closed, they are much more likely than Latinx men to say that they plan on voting in June. So not only do we have a history of strong voting, but we know that they're planning on voting in the primary election, and roughly 68% in 21 and 75% in 22. That's pretty high rates for a primary election. And then in terms of how they vote, in terms of their political views, we can see that they are self-described basically only under 25% in CD21 of Latinas describe themselves as conservative. And then in CD22, you have a higher number, but again, I think there's a characterization of the Latinx community in the Central Valley as being uniformly conservative or moderate. And I think and Pablo Rodriguez is going to talk more about this, but of course it's a much more mixed bag. And in particular, Latinas tend to be less conservative than I think many people assume. And so looking just broadly at Latino voter attitudes in the Central Valley, again, even though they were seen as socially conservative, if you look at attitudes on abortion and on immigration, even among Latina Catholics, Latinas are much more likely to be pro-choice than similarly situated white women. Latina voters are powerful because of their social networks. This is something that a number of different folks have found in their research, that Latino women tend to have much more robust networks than Latino men, particularly as they age. And if you think about this as congregational groups, friend groups, folks who support each other and their kids at school. And so those networks then can be used for politics. I found it in the organizing around 187, and the Topos Partnership found it in other politics. And so really appreciating that connective tissue that they provide within communities is very important for voter mobilization. And that there are some real issues that need to be addressed for Latinas, specifically thinking about socioeconomic status and the fact that they make so much less than men in comparable positions. And so lots of challenges to address, but a very engaged group and a group that can help mobilize other people in their communities. And I'll end with that.
Great. Thank you so much, Professor Garcia Bedoya, for that information. I know what you shared is just a small portion of the entire data sets that you have. I know you have a lot of great information, but really appreciate that key highlight. I'm born and raised in the Central Valley, so it's affirming to see statistics and data that paint the picture of some of the stories for those who live here that we already know, and really appreciate you just having some of that evidence-based data. Looking forward to Q&A to hopefully have some more questions thrown your way. So now we'll move on to our next speaker. We are going to hear from two of our amazing partners who will highlight a few key races that are happening right now. First, I just want to thank our speakers and presenters for their time today, but especially because of their hard work in this June primary election. Their leadership, the expertise of their organizations, and the boots on the ground efforts that they are leading are critical for these key races that they will be sharing with all of you. So I'd like to now turn it over to Pablo Rodriguez, Executive Director of Communities for New California Action Fund. Pablo, take it.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. So the two races that I'm going to highlight today are the Senate District 16 race in the Southern San Joaquin Valley and the Sacramento county race for district attorney. I want to pick up on what Lisa was talking about, or Dr. Bedoya was talking about. In the Senate District 16 race, 51% of the district are women, right? And Latina women, again, the same number, right, comes across as what was shown in Dr. Bedoya's presentation. The reason that you should care about Senate District 16 is that when you overlap Congressional District 22, which is the race that's now between David Valadao, the incumbent Republican, versus Rudy Salas and some other challengers from the Democratic Party, is that they almost match exactly, it's nested because of redistricting within the congressional district. And so what I expect that we will find over the next 10 years is that the people who are running for Congress may very well continue to leapfrog or just jump from the Senate district into Congress, since there's so much overlap. What we see right now, because this district is one of the new Latino majority districts, is the race is really going to come down to 3 Democrats. The incumbent in this race is identified as Melissa Hurtado, who has burned every bridge possible that she has ever come across. She identified herself as a progressive 4 years ago. She is far from that. She has a dismal voting record. Just refer to the Courage California scorecard to be able to see that for yourself. She, to date, has raised over $650,000. She's far and away the biggest fundraiser in the race. And that's thanks to, in fact, that she has the support of Senate Pro Tem Tony Atkins, right? And so this is the status quo candidate who is really backed in regards to a lot of funding or a lot of money by big ag and big oil. And so that's the challenge. In spite of the fact that she really identifies herself as the Democrat, she is not somebody that is on the side of working families in the South Valley. Nicole Parra, who is the former assembly member in this region, is the other big name in the race. She has raised less than $100,000, however, and she is the pro-business. Chamber of Commerce's are the ones that are endorsing her. The person and the underdog to watch is the mayor of the city of Delano, Brian Osorio. Brian Osorio reflects what is likely the future of this region. If he can make the top 2 in the primary, then that'll send really big shockwaves, right? Because he also has raised less than $100,000 in the race. However, he does have the endorsements of the United Farm Workers, Dolores Huerta, every environmental group they could think of in the South Valley, the Working Families Party as well. So if you can get out your voters and make it into the top 2, then it changes the landscape, right? But this is a race to watch. The challenge that we have here again is connecting with voters, especially young voters, as Brian Osorio is 26 years old. and what is going to be the future. And the argument that you will hear me make forever is those of us who grew up in the San Joaquin Valley, inherently because we didn't often have clean water to drink, we would get sick if we breathed the air, and we saw the challenges that our families went through in the workplace, are inherently progressive. However, there's this myth that we need to get rid of, that it says that this is a conservative stronghold, and that is how you need to run races. I don't believe that case to be true. You will see and continue to see the importance of Senate District 16, the importance of Congressional District 22 as we go forward the next 10 years. With the time that I have, and forgive me, I talked a little bit longer about that race than I expected, is the Sacramento County District Attorney's race. The two candidates, Tane Ho and Alana Matthews, are the only two candidates in the race. It is yet again Democrat versus Democrat. In this case, a Democrat that has received tons and tons of money from law enforcement, and that ends up begging the question, right? If you can be impartial in regards to holding police accountable and being transparent, which is the big challenge. Lana Matthews is the candidate that is endorsed by Courage California and Communities for New California. We are in fact running an independent expenditure in support of her. And what we have found is that there's a lot of people, just like in the South Valley in the Brian Osorio race, that are undecided because they just haven't been paying attention to the race. Who's ever field campaign in this race and in the South Valley does a better job of reaching out to voters and getting them out to vote is likely to win, because of the high number of people who are undecided. What we have found within our field campaign is when we really base the work and trajectory of Alana Matthews as the candidate that is the reformer, really strong support from voters from 18 to 29 in strong support. And when you combine that with lean support, we in the last recent days have found that her support is actually going over 70%. The challenge is that that the likely winner in this race is going to need 150,000 votes to win the race outright. So that's the jury's out, right, on who's going to be able to get their voters out. This district again also is 51% women, and so the information that Dr. Bedoya was actually talking about plays also, I think, in this region in the Sacramento County in regards to if the candidates and the campaigns are smart, they will center their messaging and races by focusing on the female voters of the district. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there and throw it back to Mike.
Great. Thank you so much, Pablo, for sharing about these two key races in the Central Valley and the impacts that they have, and especially just even the trends that you're starting to see. So I know that wasn't enough time as well, but we are going to move on, and hopefully there will be some great questions for you as well. I would like to bring it back to our executive director, Irene, to talk about another important district attorney race that's happening in the Bay Area. Irene?
Thank you, Mai. So one thing that I want to make sure to sort of pull out from what you heard from Pablo and what we'll hear from other folks as well is again, the idea that all politics is local. And what I mean in this particular one is, as folks sort of mentioned in the chat, both in terms of the issues that you care about, but also the issues and the dynamics that are really happening right now at the national, state, and local level, right? The sort of tug of war between sort of the forces that want to see progress and want to see improvements, and the forces that want to see us go back to a status quo that, frankly, just worked for a very few or small sliver of people here in the United States and here in California and the cities in which we live. So like Pablo was saying, in the cases of both the Senate race, state Senate race, and the district attorney race, right, those dynamics are present there. And so the race I want to talk about, similar to what Pablo was mentioning in Sacramento, is also very parallel to what is happening in Contra Costa. So Contra Costa includes some of the major cities in the East Bay Area, including Richmond, I think is the one that folks are likely the most familiar with. We have a progressive attorney there. Her name is District Attorney Diana Becton. She is both the first woman and the first Black district attorney in the history of Contra Costa. And she's the only Black district attorney in the whole state of California. She served as a judge for 22 years before she was appointed as district attorney in 2017. And then she was elected by a majority of voters in 2018. And she's now running for re-election here in 2022. So we have a case of somebody like Diana Becton, who was supported by the community, a lot of partners, including Lift Up Contra Costa Action, who was originally going to speak on this call, worked to get her appointed and then elected, and are working to get her reelected again. She's worked very closely with groups at really effectively putting in some changes into the criminal justice system in Contra Costa. So she's moved forward on, expanding diversion programs, bail reform, and restorative justice. She established the first trauma-informed victim-centered diversion program. Again, she works really closely with partners, including she convenes a community accountability set of groups every quarter to hear from community members, to hear what they care about most and how she could be doing her job better. And I think most notably, and really relevant to this particular re-election for her, last fall in 2021, she charged and got a conviction of a police officer who killed a man of color with mental health issues. This was the first conviction of an on-duty officer in the county's history, and that was really historic. And now this re-election, she is starting to sort of see the reaction from law enforcement on that. So currently she is being challenged by a deputy district attorney who's been working in her office for decades, who has the backing of law enforcement. So law enforcement associations around the Bay Area, so not just in Contra Costa, but outside of Contra Costa as well, they've already spent over $250,000 to defeat her. And this is in direct retaliation for her conviction, again, in trying to hold police accountable for their actions. And similar to like what Pablo is laying out in the Sacramento race, because this is essentially this is a two-person race, this election will be decided June 7th. So whoever wins a majority of the votes, so over 50% will win this election. So this is really important for us because public safety has always been a priority issue area for Courage California, but especially in this heightened context when we know what works and we know what doesn't work, and we need courageous leaders who are willing to invest in what we know works for public safety. And in the case of Contra Costa County, that is District Attorney Diana Becton. So Courage endorsed District Attorney Becton for re-election earlier this year, and we're partnering with Lift Up Contra Costa Action and Smart Justice California to get out the vote for District Attorney Becton. I also want to mention just in this last second too, that Contra Costa also has a competitive sheriff's race, which is pretty exciting. So Richmond Officer Ben Theriot is challenging the incumbent David Livingston, and David Livingston is very closely aligned with Mary Knox on this. So this is also going to be a June 7th race that our partners are engaging voters for in favor of Theriot as somebody who's committed to reforming the sheriff system. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Mai.
Thank you, Irene. Really appreciate the information and uplifting such an important race and an amazing incumbent that we actually have and everyone should really know about. I know, again, not enough time to go into all the details, but thank you for sharing that. I'd like to transition to our next speaker now. So I'd like to introduce Meron Shita, the Civic Engagement Manager at Black Women for Wellness Action Project.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I know we have a limited amount of time, so I'm going to power through. I'm going to be talking about the specific races in AD 61/62. It's a bit of a complicated race because you're actually being asked to vote twice. So if you live in AD 61/62, this includes areas like Venice, Inglewood, Hawthorne, Lawndale, Westmont, and parts of Gardena. Again, you're being asked to vote twice on June 7th. So the first time is to fill the seat that for the remainder of the term left open by the resignation of Autumn Burke in February of 2021, or sorry, 22 this year. So this is a short-term appointment that ends in December. The second election on that ballot is the primary to pick the assembly member for the next 2 terms. So to be clear, twice. So just to add another layer of confusion, there was also a redistricting process that changed some of the lines, the political boundaries in California. So while the majority of the residents who lived in 8062 do live in 8061, on the ballot, you will see that the short-term election is for 2, and the long-term for the next term is 8061. So, okay, that was super confusing. If anybody has questions, let me know. So moving on to the easy part, we are advocating for folks to vote for Tina McKenna in both of those races. A vote for Tina is an opportunity to elect a progressive Democrat who has the knowledge, relationships, and expertise to be an effective advocate for the community and get things done in Sacramento. Tina has a wealth and varied knowledge and experience working on the behalf of the communities at both community-based organizations and within the legislature, which equips her with a brilliant inside-outside game. She's grounded in the community, but can also navigate the politics of Sacramento. Here at Black Women for Wellness Action Project, we have proudly endorsed Tina because as a statewide organization committed to advancing the health and wellness of Black women and girls in California, we believe Tina will be the true champion for this mission. She understands the intersectional issues that serve as barriers for racial and gender justice. And she has demonstrated experience and skill creating impactful policies to better the lives of Californians. Tina has proven to be a fierce advocate, and we are confident that she is ready and qualified to represent 8062 and fight for the issues and uplift the values most important in our community. Again, a vote for Tina is a vote for a progressive. It is a vote for a steadfast voice on issues of access to healthcare and health equity. It is a vote for support to support reproductive freedoms in our state. A vote for Tina is a vote to protect our community's values. So some of her qualifications, her track record, she has supported the schools and supported school and community first initiatives. She's led a faith-based coalition of 650 clergy statewide on specifically SB2, which attempted to hold police accountable for misdemeanors and other crimes. She assisted in AB 651. She has had a lot of progressive legislation. She plans to fight to pass legislation that meaningfully addresses issues that most impact our community, like issues around transformative justice and police accountability. Just to name a few, here at Black Women for Wellness Action Project, we understand that it's important to know your district, and she is from this district. She has grown up here. She knows it well, and she has a plan to address many of the issues in Sacramento. So I don't know if I went over time, but let me know.
You're good. Thank you so much, Maran, for sharing that and highlighting such an important race and kind of teasing through even the nuances of like a special election and a regular election. So especially our folks who live in that area, just be aware that that is what is going to be on your ballot. So we are actually doing very good on time, and we will go right into our questions and answers section. So we have 2 ways for all of you as participants to engage with our presenters. The first way is if you don't want to come off mute and you would much prefer to chat a question into the chat box, please do so. I will keep an eye out on the chat box and then read those out loud for our presenters. You can ask anyone or everyone a question. And then if you'd like to actually ask the question verbally, I ask that you raise your hand and I will go ahead and call upon you, and then we will ask for you to come off mute, and then you can actually speak to the speakers directly. So we have about 10 minutes that we wanted to give all of you for question and answers. Again, I know the presentations were short, really good information, but wanted to provide space and time for all of you to engage with the speakers. So please, we will start our questions and answers section now. And I will open up my chat and then see if there's anybody who's raising their hand. Okay, I see a first question here. What is the guidance on the Alameda County DA? I know that wasn't a specific race that we covered today. So Irene, did you want to come back up and to see
Yeah.
if you wanted to provide the recommendation that we have from Courage, California?
Yes. Hi, Holly. Good to see you. Well, Alameda, this race is personal because I am also a resident of Alameda County. And I know a couple of you folks on the call are as well. So in our voter guide, we are recommending Pamela Price is the person who is most committed to reforms. The other candidates are all deputy district attorneys and who have sort of a clear sense that they will continue on with sort of the problematic track record that Nancy O'Malley has established as the current Alameda County District Attorney. I also want to mention too, for sheriff races are really interesting. We're seeing this dynamic both in Alameda County, but also Los Angeles County and other places too, where you have really problematic incumbents. In the case of Alameda County, that's Greg Ahern. Obviously in LA, Villanueva has been getting a lot of attention. In terms of sheriff races, the reason why we don't do recommendations in those races is partly because of what we can call the Villanueva effect, which is progressive groups have thought they had found an ally in Villanueva, and then when he came in office, he reversed course on what he had promised to them. So a lot of groups, partner groups of ours, don't actually do recommendations in sheriff races, but they try to give people as much information as possible. So in our voter guide, which Maya will talk about later, we try to give people a sense of, where do these folks stand on specific issues, and just as importantly, where are they getting their money? And where are they getting their endorsements? So are they getting endorsed by community groups? Are they getting endorsed and funded by law enforcement? So that is sort of some proxy information that people can use to make a vote. So I encourage folks to read up on the different candidates running for sheriff, whether it be in Alameda County or throughout the state.
Thank you. I saw a hand raised, but it went back down. So I'm just going to give that individual another chance. Do you want to raise your hand before I go to another question in the chat box? Okay, yes. I'm so sorry if I am not pronouncing your name correctly, but is it Louis Quindlen?
That's great.
Perfect.
So I guess considering the statewide situation, if we're going to donate money outside of our area, what's the best way to do that?
Do you have that question for all of the different speakers and the specific races that they talked about, and you'd like them to answer that?
Right. I mean, I guess what I'm asking is what is the most effective donation I can make right now outside of my own area?
Perfect. So maybe Pablo, I'll call on you first.
I think that the thing that I would advocate for here is to contribute. Well, forgive me here. I think that the first thing is Courage California, right? Because Courage can then reallocate funds because Irene and Maya are in touch with candidates and or campaigns that are supporting candidates, and they can disseminate that funding quickly. Or just like you're saying here, I would actually encourage you to talk to some of the staff, either Maya or Irene, and they can actually tell you who to put in contact with. Secondarily, right, there's campaigns that if you want to support. I think that Alana Matthews is a campaign that could receive and would benefit from money right now, especially in this final stretch, as well as Brian Osorio. As far as how you contribute, you just go to the websites, and you could often just donate online, and the funding will get immediately to them. And I hope I answered your question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, can I call up Moran to also answer the question for maybe the race that they're highlighting? Or did Miron already jump off? I'm sorry, I cannot see. Okay, did they already jump off? Yes. Okay, perfect. Okay, so the shout out for Courage California, yes, as your first place of donation, and then Alana Matthews. Thank you so much for that question. We have just a few more minutes. I will go ahead and move on back to the chat. Can you please tell me more about Rudy Salas? So I know Central Valley polling was highlighted today. This is a Central Valley question. So I don't know if Pablo, if you wanted to share a little bit or pivot it back to also Irene. Yeah.
Which question in regards, is it the last question?
Can you please tell me more about Rudy Salas?
I'm not sure what to say about Rudy Salas. He's a mixed bag. He's very likely in line to be, he has the slight wind at his back to become the first Latino elected to Congress in the San Joaquin Valley. He is in his mid-40s. He has a dismal voting record on environment. He has the endorsement of the United Farm Workers and Dolores Huerta. So it's a mixed bag. If we can put pressure on him during the campaign to change his ways in regards to issues of the environment, he would be a really good congressman. Unfortunately, we don't know that that's a reality, right? The irony of this whole thing is that there's a swell of young voters. Dr. Bedoya and Data for Social Good would be able to talk more about this, who are placing the issues of climate change as one of their top priorities for candidates. And because of that, he may find a big obstacle with young voters actually supporting him. So that race is going to be very close, very likely decided by less than 3 percentage points against David Valadeo. So if you live in the district, or if you can put any pressure on him in regards to his voting record on climate change, that would be the feedback that I would give in regards to Rudy Salas.
And then Pablo, yeah, if I can just take a moment of privilege to just jump onto another question that relates to the Central Valley. So since outreach to the voters in the Central Valley districts is so important, what do you do to help with that? And how can we, as folks who are on the Zoom meeting today?
I think that what I would encourage you all to do is to contact the Brian Osorio campaign directly and see what opportunities you have or he has on his campaign to be able to get out the vote. I am certain that they will have opportunities to do phone banking from wherever it is that you are at in order to contact voters and or to do text messaging, even if you don't live in the district. Brian Osorio represents a snapshot in time where he is actually the face and also the age, right, of what a young voter is in the South Valley. And as he gets older, so will the rest of the electorate that is his age, that prioritizes the future of the San Joaquin Valley as progressive. And I think that that would be the advice that I would give in the South Valley.
Perfect. And then I'm sorry, Meron, I know we lost you for a minute there and you're back on. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to also answer a previous question about if somebody has funds, dollars now that they want to directly donate to, where would you recommend that to go?
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, it kicked me out for some reason. Yeah, so if you're interested in donating to Tina McKenna or any of the candidates that you're interested in, I mean, the best bet, like Pablo said, is to contact their campaign directly. They are always looking for volunteers to either canvass at the doors, call on a phone bank or text bank. We also have opportunities for people who may not be able to donate money, but want to donate their time. We do have a Get Out the Vote campaign going on right now at Black Women for Wellness, and we're always inviting people to come out and talk to residents, find out what's important to them, find out why they plan to vote the way they do, so that we can use that feedback for future campaign efforts.
Thank you. And really quickly, we have one more raised hand, and this will be our last question. Is it Michelle Taines? You can come off mute. Or Michael. Okay, can you hear us?
Yes, hi. I was interested in learning more about the Supreme Court nominees. Where's the best place to get information?
Great, thank you for that question. Irene, did you want to just take that one on behalf of Courage and the work that we do? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Hi, Michelle. So I put it in the chat, a good resource to start with federal judgeships. So this is both the Supreme Court, but also much broader than that. Because as we know, the other federal judgeships are a pipeline to the Supreme Court. So one really good resource to start with is the American Constitution Society. Some folks sort of consider them a response to the Federalist Society, but I don't think they have quite the reach that Federalist Society has managed to build. But that's a really good starting place. There are other like justice reform partners, including the ACLU, who will sometimes weigh in on Supreme Court judges and nominees as well.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. I apologize again, such a short Q&A session, but thank you for participating in that. We wanted to move on to our next part of the program, which is going to focus on a few voter resources and information for all of you. And so I'd like to now introduce Angela Chavez, our Courage California Communications Director, who will be sharing about our criminal justice reform resources.
Yes, thank you, Mai. So once you know how you're voting and have returned your ballot, don't forget to spread the word. We know that this June 7th primary election is expected to have lower turnout, which means those voices who do make their voices heard will have a big impact in California and in our communities. So I encourage you to visit couragecalifornia.org to find voting resources that you can share. And with that, I will attempt to share my screen. Success, I do believe. So under the campaigns tab, and let me see if I can open this up. Yeah. Under the campaigns tab, you'll find week of action, such as this event right here, which you are attending. But you can also find our California Public Safety campaign information. Now, we've just heard about various DA races, so it goes without saying that public safety is on the ballot. And you've also likely heard via the news or campaign ads and mailers a lot about crime lately. Well, guess what? When you look at the numbers, especially in California and in our various progressive districts, there is little to no truth about the claims about California that have dominated the headlines and the campaign ads. In fact, progressive districts have lower crime rates than some of our state's more conservative districts, but you wouldn't really know that. This is why Courage California created a public safety campaign that everyone can use, because once again, public safety is on the ballot and our communities deserve to be safe. So here you will find shareable community safety. Here you will find shareable community safety resources, solutions that keep people safe and keep communities whole, endorsements, graphics, myths and facts, and some handy news articles. So please let your friends and family members know that California public safety is on the ballot and ask them to make their voices heard and vote their values on or before June 7th.
Great. Thank you so much, Angela. And yes, if you haven't checked out our website, it's full of a lot of different resources, some, again, really specific campaigns, but other great information as well. I hope that the little live screen share here is helpful for all of you to think through the conversations that you might be having with family and friends, especially around public safety and criminal justice reform. So I will be sharing a little bit about our California voter guide from Courage California. I'm excited to let you all know that our voter guide has been live for a couple of weeks, and we continue to add races down from the federal level down to the local level each week. So that's constantly being updated. Our voter guide is really meant to give you information to give you what you need to make progressive choices on your ballot. And so we recommend ballot measures and candidates that prioritize people over power, and we try to expose the influence of money in our elections. So our voter guide team does a lot of hard work, and they look into candidate priority issues, the endorsements that the candidates are getting, campaign contributions, the candidates' governing and community leadership records. And we also try to unpack any misinformation about a race or a candidate. So what you see on the screen now is our voter guide, the actual website. And then we can go ahead and also put in the direct link into the chat that will take you there. It is really fun because it is a customizable voter guide. So you can enter your address or click the county that you will be voting in, and that particular information, the races specific to that geography will pop up for you. So you might be living in a different county from family and friends, but you can share with them, and then they can click this voter guide and I'll take them directly to the geography that they're voting in. One thing that I want to highlight, as you can see on the screen here, under the candidate's name at the beginning of the top of the page, we also added our little badges. So these are badges to help you let you know upfront some of the stances that these candidates have. So the badges that we have are, this candidate is saying no to corporate money. So if that's important for you and they have that badge, it's there. This candidate is saying no to fossil fuel money. This candidate is saying no to police money or law enforcement associations money. And this candidate is saying no to real estate money. So if we found that in our research, then this is actually going to go ahead and be under their profile, and they'll earn these badges here. All right. And I think with that, we will go ahead and do our last live Zoom poll just to engage you a little bit more towards the end of the power hour here. We want to hear from you, and this will not be a live poll on the screen. We just want you to go ahead and chat this in. What race or candidate are you most excited to vote for? So if you can please chat in the chat what race or candidate you are most excited to vote for, especially for this June 7th primary election. I'll give you a few seconds. All right. You see some repeats here already. So Pamela Price. In some areas, unfortunately, there aren't our super strong, champion, progressive champions. And so there might not be a lot of excitement about particular candidates. Great, we have Alana Matthews. Yes, and obviously that was one of the key races that we highlighted today. Really, really excited. All right, please continue to chat. We'd love to hear who else you're excited for. Again, we didn't have time to go through all of our endorsed candidates today from Courage, California, but some of the names that are being thrown out there are probably going to align with the endorsements that we made. We're going to go ahead. We're so close to the finish line of our power hour, but before we end, I would like to actually introduce Amber Washington, our Courage, California Development Director. Take it away, Amber.
Thank you, Mai, and good afternoon to all of you, or early evening rather. Thank you to everyone who joined our California Voter Week of Action Power Hour event today. As you have all heard here from all of our knowledgeable speakers on the call, it is crucial to turn in your ballots for the June 7th primary elections. We know that there are a lot of things going on in the world right now, and sometimes being civically engaged is the last thing that you want to do. But as we all know, your voice and your vote are so important in order to elect candidates that will advocate for courageous change in our communities. So we do hope that you make good use of the Courage California Voter Guide, share it with your families and friends as you complete your ballots and read them over and take into consideration all the things you learned here today. And as you make your plans to vote, if it's by mail or in person. It takes a lot of hard work to produce the voter guide. Our small but mighty team, it is a labor of love. to produce this invaluable resource for all Californians. And that is why we are asking you today to please consider making a donation to Courage California so we can continue to produce these types of resources, or even become a monthly Courageous donor so that we can continue to provide this invaluable voter education, to voters in California, not only for the June primaries, but for all elections in California. Also, I just wanted to remind folks, hopefully you've seen our emails, to please save the date for our virtual fundraising event this September. It will be Wednesday, September 14th at 5 p.m. Courageous Voices, One Movement. Special guests will be announced very soon, so please check our social media for announcements, and of course, your emails, because we will be sending you updates very soon. Thank you all again for your time, and I will pass it back to you, Mai.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Amber, for that information. Looking forward to folks joining us later on in fall. And we also wanted to provide one more kind of call to action opportunity for all of you. So if you can't give financial resources, you can also always give your time. So we'd like to highlight a few volunteer opportunities that we wanted to share with you that we collected from some of our trusted partners across the state. So we put together this PDF that will also drop into the chat. It has opportunities for you to sign up for canvassing efforts. If you'd like to, I know the summer is heating up. So if you're not trying to be outside, then there's phone banking opportunities, text banking as well. And some of these opportunities are directly tied to these key races that were mentioned today. And then some of these opportunities are tied to, again, Courage California endorsed candidates that we already support. And there are different campaign efforts and then other groups that are leading these boots on the ground. So if you can also find some time from now until June 7th, in the next 12 days to give a little bit of time for these really, really critical races, this would be really helpful to all of us. All right. And so the last thing that we wanted to just say before we close up is that, we know that as of today, only about 6% of ballots have been returned for this election cycle. That is just a very low number. Primary election, like I mentioned at the beginning, is so critical, and there are so many important races that could be decided now, right, instead of November. I know that there's a lot of different races to be supportive of, but hopefully you can take the time to connect with friends and family if they haven't voted yet, because I'm pretty sure most of you who are on the call today are well informed and have some right resources. But right now it's about mobilizing our friends and families. Some of the folks who might not always be tuned into politics or might not have the most updated information. So we are asking for you all to connect with family and friends for the next 12 days to encourage and ensure that folks are voting, especially in your neighborhoods and the district. And I saw earlier there was some excitement around some of our statewide officer races, right? So I saw some information about the Secretary of State and things like that. So again, we do have some pretty big offices at the state of California that are up for this election as well. And I just want to lastly thank our presenters who spoke today. I really appreciate, again, the hard work that you're putting in, boots on the ground for these campaigns, the expertise that you have and the staff that you have dedicated from now until June 7th, and even beyond election cycles, all of the great work that you do at the grassroots level. Also would like to thank our ASL interpreters, Kayla Rubano and Neil Cordova from Pro Bono ASL for joining us tonight and providing interpretation services. And definitely just want to thank you all for giving your time. It's a busy Thursday evening from 5 to 6, probably right before dinner. So you all might be hungry. We just appreciate you spending some time with us. And the last call to action that we would like to end on is that tomorrow, Friday, is the last day of our California Voter Week of Action. So we are hoping that you can post on your social media any candidates that you are excited about, any particular issues that you're excited about for the June 7th primary election, and tag us at Courage California, share on your social media, email a few friends and family about the election and who you care about or what you're hoping and excited to vote for, so we can continue this energy on into June 7th. Thank you so much. And I think we're good for tonight. We can go ahead and stop the recording. And I think Courage staff will hang on for a few minutes. But thank you so much for joining our June primary California Voter Week of Action Power Hour events. And we look forward to having another event right before the November election too. So tune in for the rest of the year. Thank you, everyone.